Om Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinnavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Satsanga Sudhaya Tata
Satsanga Sudhaya Tata
Mana Ananditam Yada
Mana Ananditam Yada
Nischetavyam Tada Mohat
Nischetavyam Tada Mohat
Mama Muktir Bhavishyati.
Mama Muktir Bhavishyati.
Yeah, so this is I saw one more thing. What was that? Satsanga Sudhaya Tata Mana Ananditam. So this is what it is. In the Mandukya Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad has a commentary called Karika, written by the grand guru of Adi Shankara. Who is that? Gaudapada Acharya. So Gaudapada Acharya says something very beautiful. He says that in meditation, when you start to feel light and happy and wonderful, what is it that one wants to do? Go and keep experiencing that feeling. He says, no, don't do that. Don't get addicted to the feeling, get addicted to the witness. Because when you're addicted to the feeling, then the feeling is fleeting and then you're left with yourself again, the subject-object difference. So the feeling is just an emanation of the joy which is the nature of the subject. The feeling is an object and therefore it is subject to be finite. And so when you hang on to the feeling, what happens? The feeling goes away. As soon as you say how well I am meditating, then it goes. So he says, Naswadayet rasam tatra nistango prajnaya bhavet. Be in the place of the witnessing. And here also, Narahari is saying something similar, that when you are in the company of the Mahatma, even though you are going goo goo gaga, how wonderful, don't go with the feeling. Use that to have your wits about you and make a decision. Use that to make a decision to get closer to yourself and to let go of the delusion. And also it's a silent decision to have a guru. Even before it is told to the guru, that's why it's so esoteric. It's a silent decision to have a guru and to say that nischetavyam, that I'm going to decide that I am going to be released from bondage of delusion. I'm going to be released from this delusion by studying with you. And so many things have come in this one verse. Shraddha is here. Shraddha has been brought in. Why? Because I am saying, in the first person it is saying, I will be free of delusion. Correct? And then what else is being talked about? Vairagya, because that feeling of Ananda, I'm not going into, I'm watching it, I'm observing it from the standpoint of the witness. Vairagya is there, Shraddha is there, Viveka is there. Why? Nischetavyam, the nischaya is made, that discrimination, that decision is being made. So basically, Viveka, Vairagya and Shraddha, if those three have been brought in, what else is remaining? Nothing. If those three are there, the knowledge is definitely set to take place. So in sitting in front of the Mahatma, you gain the adhikaritvam, and to make use of this, to have the desire to be free of longing, which is the delusion. Very nice. Beautiful verse. Sadhananam hi sarvesham
Sadhananam hi sarvesham
varishtha sadhu sangatihi
Varishtha sadhu sangati
etaya siddhaya siddham
Etaya siddhaya siddham
sarvameva hi sadhanam
Sarvameva hi sadhanam
sadhananam hi sarvesham
Sadhananam hi sarvesham
varishtha sadhu sangatihi
Varishtha sadhu sangati
etaya siddhaya siddham
Etaya siddhaya siddham
sarvameva hi sadhanam.
Sarvameva hi sadhanam.
So we have some words with which he is playing. So in this verse we have word play and alliteration. Especially in the second line you can see the alliteration. Do you know what is alliteration? So this, so we have all sibilants. Yeah. In the second line. So there is a word play and alliteration, and the word play is centered on the three four words which we use in Vedanta relentlessly, technical terms. One is sadhana, practice, also translated as practice, but also means what? Means. Sadhana means sadhya, end. Siddha, accomplished. The one who has accomplished the end is called Siddha. So the sadhana and sadhya are very important, because without this background we cannot understand this verse. So therefore I'm going to talk about sadhana, sadhya a bit, and then we'll come back to the verse. Sadhana here, not in the verse, but in the context of Vedanta, sadhana has a particular meaning. And what is that? What are the means I deploy? And why do I need means? Because I need an end. I have an end in view. What is that end? Mohat muktihi kada bhavishyati. When will I be free from delusion? That is, the freedom from delusion is the end. And what is the end called? Sadhya, to be accomplished. But I'm already free, but I don't know. So therefore it becomes an as though end, to be fulfilled, to be accomplished. And so that becomes the end. Freedom from delusion is sadhya, correct? And the study of Vedanta becomes sadhana. And once I gain this knowledge, I become siddha. Success or accomplishment is called siddhi. The one who is accomplished is called siddha. And so in Vedanta, we always stress that sadhana and sadhya should be related. Even in life, it should be related. If I want to go to a supermarket, then but I drive the opposite direction. I drive in the direction of the airport. That means what is happening? The sadhana and sadhya are not aligned. Misaligned means and ends. Because what is the end? To go to the market. And where am I going instead? To the airport. Where am I headed? To the airport. So the sadhana, the means, which is driving to the airport, is not aligned to gain or promise the end in view, which is going to the market. Because the two, let us say, happen to be on opposite ends in the town. So therefore, in the world, in Vedanta we say that in the world, all the struggles and the strife is due to the wrong alignment of sadhana and sadhya. In someone without viveka and vairagya, what happens? What is the sadhana? I want to be happy. What is the sadhya? I want to be happy. What is the end? I want to be happy. That is the end. And what is the sadhana? I want to hoard a lot of things because things make me happy. Do things make you happy? No. When do you understand? After having a lot of things and not knowing what to do with them. Things make me happy. Wrong. Correct? So therefore, because of this wrong assumption, what do? I accumulate. And so there is a misalignment of the means and ends, and it is samsara. No, I'm not caring so much about things. Oh, so what is your thing? My thing is people. I want to be surrounded by people. People make me happy. Another problem there, because the misalignment of means and ends. That happiness that you're seeking is already you, but since you don't know that, you want that something which is forever, that infinity is what you seek. If that is not understood through viveka, and you don't know what is nitya and anitya, and you're going after anitya, the finite, in order to produce nitya, the infinite, it's going to be an uphill battle. Like that Greek character Prometheus. Prometheus was cursed. What did he have to do? Whole night he had to roll up a big boulder on top of a hill. And then as soon as he rolled it on top of the hill, in the morning it would roll down in 2 minutes. His whole night job, in 2 minutes it would go. These are all these stories from from all these epics all over the world. They illustrate the futility of these pursuits, these dead end, no end pursuits. So samsara is nothing. The definition of samsara is nothing but wrong sadhana and sadhya. Wrong sadhana deployed to gain the sadhya, which seems forever elusive. This is the problem. Okay? And so in the ABC of Vedanta is very clear. What does it say? It says, get all your sadhana and sadhya in a row. Forget the ducks. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is. Because right now, the kind of sadhana and sadhya that you have, the sadhya is always ducking. It's not coming to life. So get them aligned. Use your viveka, use your discrimination to really think about what is it that you want. Do you want people? Well, kind of, yes. But is it really that the people you want? No. I want what is produced by this companionship. And what is produced by the companionship? Some joy, some happiness. I want what is produced by the friendship. What is produced by the friendship? Some kind of a feeling of being wanted, being, included, being approved, being loved. But the self is already approvable, the self is already lovable, the self is all, but I don't know that. And so therefore, you see, everything that you want is for the sake of something else. I want money. What for? Just to keep it in the bank and look at. See, nobody sees money. Money is something, unless you're, dealing in a cash economy and you buy some small, shoelaces and you don't want to pay for the credit card, then you just give $2 and walk away. But other than that, nobody sees money. You have to have shraddha that you have a paycheck. And it goes directly into this bank over which you have, that's why it's called bank, because you have to bank on it. Yeah. You have to have greater Shraddha in the bank that it is there. And if you demand, I want to be shown these many thousands of dollars that I have there, they're going to laugh at you. They're going to say, that's why we sit here and send you monthly statements. Look at the statement. Statement is just ink. It's not money. It's just ink. So what? Even if you say $1,640,000 is in the balance. Let's think big. And so if you see that, and you're not really seeing the money. The money is never for the sake of money. What does money do? When you see 1,640,000, so many, that aha. What is that aha? Artha, security. A feeling of security. And then some world leader dies and then the market comes down. Oh no! Some dictator dies and the market comes down, and then suddenly, oh, market is up. Yippee! Oh no! Yippee! Oh! One becomes a yo-yo. That is what it is. So nothing that one desires, nothing that one pursues is for the sake of that thing. It is for the sake of something else entirely. No, I don't want all this. I'm just in love with my house. Why are you in love with your house? No, I love my house. It's so wonderful. Why? Again, it gives security. Somebody told me, I like the fact that I'm married, but I don't care for my spouse. That's exactly what it is. Very honest statement. That marriage gives a certain security. Or the concept of marriage. So all this is the viveka that one has to deploy to see that the means that I'm employing are not giving me the end that I really seek. The means are many, the end is one. And the many means are just all frittered and distracted because I'm not cognizant of the end. The end in view being myself, there can only be one means, that this ignorance of the I is removed. That's the only means. So he's going to have fun and he's going to play on this sadhana, sadhya, in the light of this satsanga, this union with the wise. So let us look at the verse. Sarvesham sadhananam he yasmat, because he, in English we cannot start a sentence with because, but in Sanskrit we can. So he yasmat, why? Because because you make this decision. What is the decision? May I be released from delusion. Why do you make this decision? Because sarvesham sadhananam varishtha sadhu sangatihi. Of all the sadhanas that you have at your disposal, all the means that you have at your disposal, from malls to balls, whatever you can do to distract yourself, to make yourself happy for the short duration of time, all of them that you have, sarvesham sadhananam, very easy Sanskrit. Of all the sadhanas at your disposal, Varishtha, the most exalted, Varishtha, Sadhu Sangatihi, the association with the sadhu, with the person of wisdom. Of all the things that you can do to feel better or to remove samsara, because even the most addicted samsari is trying to remove samsara. So of all the things that you can do, all the sadhanas to ward off samsara, the best sadhana is sitting with the sadhu or associating with the sadhu. Why? Because the sadhu is the key. It's the key sadhana, because the sadhu is not just a sitting sadhu, simply sitting sadhu. The sadhu is a teaching sadhu, as it will be revealed in the later verses. So the teaching sadhu is going to teach, and so you invest in the teaching sadhu, and so what happens as a result? That is the best sadhana. Sarvesham hi sadhananam, of all the sadhanas. And what are the sadhanas? All kinds of austerities that people do to get closer to Ishvara, to God, closer to the self, closer with everyone else, and everything. So all that, whatever people do, whether they whether they do yoga or bhoga or whatever it is, so many things, there are myriads of means. Of all the means, the best thing is to sit with a teaching sadhu, to sit with a guru is the best, is to associate with the teacher is the best and the most exalted form of practice or means. Why? Etaya siddhaya. When this is accomplished, when this is accomplished, what is accomplished? Sitting with the sadhu, preferring the company of the sadhu to going to some other place or doing something else, or floating one's own company. So, sitting with the sadhu, when that is preferred, that has to become siddha. That sadhana has to become siddha. And what is the siddhi here? The siddhi is like tapas siddhi, japas siddhi. Siddhi means an accomplishment. Like japas siddhi is accomplishment in doing japa. So, japa means counting the beads, the meditation. So the first day it sounds boring, and oh my God, I never thought 108 was an infinite number, because by the time you reach the end of this, you feel like, oh my God, it must be definitely 2 hours. It's only been 15 minutes, but it feels like 2 hours. Oh my God, how am I going to do this? This is not okay. And then you peek, look at the time, look at a few emails, go back and, and then look at a few more messages. It is interminable, this japa, correct? But then as you get used to it, then you say, oh, it was hardly any time at all. How quickly it passed. Then 1 mala is nothing. Then you graduate to 2 malas. Oh no, I wish I had never taken up 2 malas. 1 was enough. What was wrong with me? Was I mad? Then after a while you become a 2 mala japasiddha. Then you graduate to become a 3 mala a day japasiddha. 4 mala a day, 5 mala a day. Of course, then somebody will have to bring you bhiksha by this time. And then, so this is what is called japasiddhi. Tapas siddhi, tapas also, like I'll eat only once a day. Sometimes people have that. Or I will only do these kinds of things, and I'll refrain from those kinds of activities. So those austerities, in the beginning it feels wretched. But then when you persevere, you become accomplished. And Pujya Swamiji would always say, if you want siddhi, do something, for 48 minutes a day at least, for 48 days. Because the 48 is a mandala. And when you do something for 48 days, you can do it forever. No problem. So meditation you want to take up, meditate not once a day every year for 48 years. No, consecutively. 48 days, 48 minutes a day. You see there is truth to this. Then you will not have any distraction in meditation, because you have become a japasiddha. You have become a siddha here with regarding to japa. Mantra siddhi, same thing. The mantra also you have accomplished, because you don't say Om Namaha. What comes after? Oh yeah, Shivaya. Om. It's all there. So 48 minutes a day for 48 days. Try it, you'll like it. 48 days you can do anything. Come on. Easy. What is today? 14th of February. So count 48 days. And so 15 days will be 1st of March, and then plus another 30. 15 plus 30, 45, 30th of March, And then 3rd of April, 4th, just in case we are wrong, 4th of April. Yeah. Before you file your taxes, you will have Japa Siddhi. If you start today, meditating for 48 minutes till April 4th, yeah, you will have Japa Siddhi. Try it. So, this is how you become a Siddha, okay, in anything. You have to work at it. You have to do this. And here he says, merely and simply by surrendering to the altar of teaching, which is a sadhu, which is a guru, you get an instant siddhi. Oh, I like this one better. In order to get this one, you have to have that one. That's what it is. So, sarvesham sadhananam varishtha. Varishtha means the most exalted of all the sadhanas is sadhu sangatihi. Even though it's translated as companionship, we have to say a association or sitting at the feet of or the surrender to the wise, to the sadhu. Etaya siddhaya. So when this is accomplished, because it's not, even though it seems effortless, and he is punning on that, it's an effortless siddhi, but he is punning on it because it also takes a lot of effort to decide to study and sit with the sadhu rather than go about one's day. That's why we are, having the 1 month course. Lot of practice of sitting. Yeah. And, with classes coming out of the ears, this is a very good, whether you're sitting offline or online or, in person, that's a lot of sitting. And then, even though it's not a 48-day course, we still have the Shraddha that it is as good as a 48-day course, because a lot of things that are not necessary get jostled and fall off, and a lot of dridata, a certainty of the clarity emerges and takes place. So it's not easy to sit with the wise, because the wise refuse to engage with what you want to engage in. Yeah. You want to engage in, so how was your trip? What did you eat? Where did you go? What do you like to have? Which color do you like the best? They'll always say orange. So what's the point in asking, Which color do you like the best? Do you love me? These are all questions for which there are really no answers. And so therefore, and this is not the level in which the sadhu engages. The sadhu engages on a different level. And to learn to engage with the sadhu, you have to change your frequency by frequenting the sadhu. Because the samsaric frequency is a very low level frequency, correct? Yeah, the samsaric frequency is all about subject-object division and dwelling and reveling in that division, and occasionally feeling smarted and upset by that division, and and then again going back to the division, for sharanagati, meaning surrendering to that division again and again, because without that there is nothing. It's an addictive life. So imagine, 100 addicted persons in front of a person who has no addiction issues. What are they going to talk about? So there is a different level of engagement here, and for which that siddhi has to take place. So he's punning on the word, even though it seems effortless. Oh, go to the sadhu, sit down. Big deal. I can do that. I know where the sadhu lives. Go sit down. Not so easy. Why? Because that 48 days has had to happen. The mind already has to be relatively quiet to even prefer the sadhu's company, to sit there. And the mind has to be in a place of receptivity, rather than wanting to drag the sadhu to the level of, engagement of what one is accustomed to, a customary engagement. And what is the customary engagement? That which ratifies and makes greater the subject-object divide, which is the cause of misery, because object is nothing but subject. Object resolves into subject. And so, etaya siddhaya siddham. So, this is itself has to be accomplished, for which some cobwebs have to go. I have to desire this company. It's a cultivated, even though the desire for moksha is an uncultivated desire, the desire for study, jijnasa, has to be cultivated, because that mumuksha, the desire for freedom, has to change into a quantum, with the help of a quantum leap, into the desire for knowledge. Because the desire for freedom, even though it's a worthy pursuit, is amorphous. The desire for knowledge clinches that desire completely and brings it home in a way that is understood and appreciated. And so therefore, I have to have that desire for knowledge. And I have to convert the desire for freedom, the desire for a contact high of sitting with a sadhu, the desire to hang out with a sadhu, to, reinscribe samsara. I have to change all that to be a recipient of the only thing that the sadhu can give me. What? Give me back myself. So I have to learn to be a recipient of that. And that is what is the siddhi here. How do I do that? By taking classes, by coming frequently. No, but I just had a class this morning. That doesn't matter. This is afternoon now. Have another. But I'm ODing on the classes, never mind. It's the best thing to OD on. And so that frequenting the sadhu and preferring that, cultivating the association with the wise frequently. And here, etaya siddhaya siddham, he is saying it's not a one-time thing. It's not I go once and say, oh, what a great Mahatma, and come away. It's not a contact high. It's not a one-time thing. It's through frequenting the sadhu that, my frequency is changed. My frequency otherwise is at a very, divisive level, playing in the realm, or rather suffering in the realm of duality. And if I have to see and appreciate what the sadhu is seeing and appreciating, I have to really be in a place that is receptive. And that receptivity, along with Shraddha, see, in the first verse we have Vairagya, Viveka and Shraddha. Here Titiksha. Titiksha is brought in here because that I have to put up with the discomfort of sitting with the sadhu. And the discomfort is mithya. There is no discomfort. In fact, it's the most comfortable situation. It's the most exalted place for me. But the discomfort comes from the mind, that is the ego, that is clamoring for something to do. That is saying all kinds of things. No, you're wasting your time. What are you doing? And why do you need so many classes? Whatever it is. All those things have to be quietened down, and that discomfort, the mastery of that discomfort is what is needed for that self-mastery at the end. So first I have to master the discomfort by cultivating the desire for the company of the wise person or wise people, sadhu sangati, sadhunam sangati, or sadhus sangati, one or many, doesn't matter. I cultivate that. Etaya siddhaya siddham. When this is accomplished, then siddham sarvam sadhanam. Sarvameva hi sadhanam. Indeed, when I am able to sit with the sadhu, indeed when I cultivate the desire for being with the sadhu, then indeed when I change my personality enough to sit with the sadhu, then everything else is as though accomplished. Sarvameva hi sadhanam siddham. Meaning what? Meaning what is the sadhana now here? The knowledge. The knowledge is as good as gained. All I have to do is expose myself to the knowledge by being with the teacher, and then the being with the teacher assures that the knowledge is as though gained as it were. That's why the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad with alacrity says, Acharyavan Purusho Veda. The person who has a teacher already knows. How can you say that? How can you make this preposterous claim that the person who has a teacher knows? That is the Shraddha here. That is the certainty of this knowledge, that if you have the proper teacher, you will know. You as good as know. And this is the same reason why Nachiketa in the Kathopanishad is addressed by Yama, Lord Yama. Vidwan. Vidwan means someone who already knows how. Nachiketa came just 2 minutes ago for the knowledge, and 2 minutes into the conversation he is calling him Vidwan. How? He is calling him somebody who is already accomplished, wise one. Because he is sure of the transmission. He is sure that if there is a teacher and if there is a qualified student, the knowledge has to take place. And what is the qualification of the qualified student? The ability to pursue the knowledge and to do everything to pursue the knowledge. That is the only qualification of the qualified student. So the qualification is to be able to sit with the teacher. That's the only qualification. Of course, behind that sitting, when you unpack the sitting, then Viveka, Vairagya, Shraddha, Titiksha, Shamadama, all that, slowly come in. That's what the whole thing. So, etaya siddhaya siddham, sarvameva hi sadhanam. All the sadhanas are, what is that? All the means are just resolved into this one mega maha means, which is what? Sitting with the teacher. Why? Because it's the most exalted means of gaining the knowledge. In fact, I will go so far as to translate it's the only means. It is exalted because it's the only way, no other way. Very beautiful. And so, who is this Siddha? Who is this person that I should sit next to, or whose company should I start to desire, is given in the next 3 verses. Shashvadishvara bhaktaye, virakta samadarshanaha, sadhavasevitavyaste, sadhavasevitavyaste, mokshashastra visharadaha, shashvadishvara bhaktaye, virakta samadarshanaha, sadhavasevitavyaste, mokshashastra visharadaha. Still some unsureness is there. We are going to chant it one more time. Shashvadishvara bhaktaye, virakta samadarshinaha, samadarshanaha, virakta samadarshanaha, sadhavasevitavyaste,
Sadhavah sevitavyaste
Mokshashastra visharadaha.
Mokshashastra visharadaha.
So there are certain qualifications for the sadhavaha. Sadhuhu, sadhu, sadhavaha. Okay, sadhavaha plural. And along with that, who are these sadhus? The word sadhavaha, the sadhus are qualified by the following, 4 words. One is a compound, 2 are compounds, all of them are compounds actually except viraktaha. Shashvadishvara bhaktaha, 1 word. So this is the qualifying the sadhus. And viraktaha, 2nd qualification. 3rd qualification, samadarshanaha. 4th qualification, mokshashastra visharadaha. So there are 4 qualifications of those whose company you should seek and stick with them. And these are the qualifications. And don't say sevitavyaha, that is also a qualification because it all ends in aha. No. No. So, these are the qualifications. And what are the qualifications? Shashvadishvara bhaktaha ye. Ye means those. Who are these people? Those that are Shashvadishvara bhaktaha, those that are viraktaha, those that are samadarshanaha, those that are mokshashastra visharadaha. So in these 4, the Brahmanishtha and Shrotriyatva, both Brahmanishtatva and Shrotriyatva are both brought out. And I will tell you how. Shashvad Ishvara Bhaktaha Ye. Ishvara Bhakta is very simple. Who are the devotees of Ishvara? But what kind of devotee? A Jnani devotee. Jnani Bhaktaha. The one who knows that the object of worship is indeed myself alone. So revels at everything as Ishvara. So that bhakti is not an act directed against another object, but that bhakti is just a state of being, is oneself alone, is an attitude with which all things are viewed and all actions emanate from that trust and from that reverential understanding. So it is bhakti. So the bhakta here is not the one who is always in prayer, but the bhakta is the one who is always prayerful. There is a difference. The one in prayer, the prayer becomes an action. The one who is prayerful is an attitude with which all actions and all things are seen and all actions are performed with which attitude and all things are seen from which standpoint is called prayerfulness. So the one who has graduated to a place of prayerfulness rather than prayer as a discrete act. So a devotee who is devotional, and devoted rather than, devotion as a discrete act or a series of acts. So everybody is a bhakta, correct? Even the person who has not looked at Ishvara at all, when their life is under threat, they will say, "Oh my God, where are you?" Such bhakta is what? Kadachit bhakta. Kadachit kaha means kabhi kabhi bhakta. Sometimes bhakta, not all the time. When the going is good, no bhakti. When the going is bad, they'll visit all the temples. In India this happens. The temples are very crowded at the time of college exams. All the students go there before going to the college. The rest of the time, the teenagers and temples are as far away from each other as possible. They are allergic to the temples. They'll only go when they are dragged in by the parents. But then come time for exams, exam kale samprapte. What happens? They go by themselves. You don't have to tell them. They go and they won't tell the parents they have gone, because otherwise the parents will make them go other times too. So they'll say, oh, I'm just going to a movie, but they'll go to the temple and then go to the college. So this is how it is. So usually the bhakti is like that. Once in a while it erupts, the rest of the time, theek hai, okay. And the more dire the situation, the more bhakti, just like the bhakti is like a volcano when the trauma is a lot. Correct? More drama, more bhakti, more trauma, more bhakti. But that is not the definition of a sadhu. That's why the word is shashvat. Shashvat means always. The one who has become a siddha in bhakti, the one who has accomplished bhakti, for whom bhakti is no longer a sadhana to get an object of kama, but the one is just a bhakta for the sake of being a bhakta. Usually bhakti is a tool deployed to gain something in time. Correct? I have prayer as a tool, reverence is a tool, devotion is a tool to say, please give me a Mercedes Benz. That is a different kind of a bhakti. Here, the bhakti is accomplished for its own sake rather than for the sake of getting something, karma oriented, getting some desire or need met. So the bhakti is nishkama bhakti, you can call it. Is coming from vairagya. Then why have bhakti? Bhakti here is awe, because the universe is awesome. The subject-object duality has been resolved. The object is nothing but an extension of the subject. And everything is awesome. When you look at the world with the eyes of the Mahatma, you see everything as always, very, very wonderful. Nothing comes in the way because it is what it is. It is just so wonderful. And even the difficulties are taken for whatever they are. And it's a no-brainer. If one is tired, one has to rest. What else is there, And if one is, energetic, one goes and does things. If something needs to be done, one has to do it. If it need not be done, one does not do it. It's very simple. Somebody told me that there was a contest. Somebody told me this story. There was a contest between two shishyas, each one talking about their guru. Each one was talking about their own guru, his own guru. And so one fellow said to the other, my guru is so enlightened that he doesn't need to eat or sleep or go to the bathroom. What pressure, really? And the other one said, my guru is so enlightened that when he's tired, he sleeps. When he's hungry, he eats. And when he wants to go to the bathroom, he goes to the bathroom. Yeah. So that is what we are talking about here. There is a sahaja, there is a certain kind of a comfort. One is at home with oneself. So one is at home with everything. That's all incumbent on being at home with oneself. And that at-homeness here is described as bhakti, because everything being Ishvara and Ishvara being the only thing there, and if I am fixated only on that one thing which is the truth of myself, then I have no, qualms or no differences with anything else. So the one who has settled accounts with Ishvara, the one who does not have any kind of superimposed transference of authority, fears, all these things are not there. The one who simply is all the time, Shashvat. Yeah. And here I have to also say this, because this is where the stumbling block is for many people. Shashvadishvara Bhakta. Here, it can be seen as someone who's always doing japa. Ishvara, 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 Shiva, 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 Vasudeva, 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 Narayana, 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 Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. And this becomes like a pressure for the student. Oh, I have to just keep on thinking about God. Okay, think about God. God, thought number one. God. Thought number 2. What's thought number 3? Dog. Yeah. And what happened here? Dog displaced God, correct? Now you are no longer thinking about God. And so therefore what? So Shashvatishvara Bhakta means you have to be fixated on God, 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 God. And then what? Sandwich. Oh my God. Because it's Bhiksha time. So somebody brought a sandwich. And so, so then, such a person is not Shashvatishvara Bhakta. Because that God was displaced by sandwich. Mere sandwich has the power to displace God from the brain. Oh my God. And then after sandwich, what? God, 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 God. Sleep comes because, sandwich is carbohydrates. And so, then also the sleep disrupted. No more God in sleep. And then what? Then woke up. Oh, that's odd. I was thinking of God. What happened? God, 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 God. This is not what is being talked about. And so even though it may be tempting to consider somebody who's always mumbling God, 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 God in any language, whatever the language may be, I'm just saying God, 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 but it could be Narayana, 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 Govinda, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. That's, I'm not disparaging the practice, it's wonderful. No problem at all. But God cannot be an object of thought. It is not something that is enveloped by a thought, because when the thought becomes, more long lasting than God, we know that thought is kshanika. God cannot be enveloped by a vritti. Vritti is God. That which is enveloped, that object is God. The one who is chanting is God. So the injunction, please think about God all the time, is a very difficult one if you are looking at God as an object. So then how to think of God all the time? The problem is think off. Whenever you use the word preparation off, you are off. That's what it is. That's off. Because off means what? Subject-object division is there. Then what is this? What is how to be a Shashvatishvara Bhakta? How to be always in God? Sometimes people put it this way. How to be one with God? How to be God-oriented? How to be a forever Bhakta without losing that Bhakti when the sandwich comes? There's only one way. That is through Jnanam. And only through knowledge, self-knowledge, can this be accomplished. How is that accomplished? Because you see that when you are the thinker, you have thinker, I, and then you have thought, which is the means of knowing, whatever it is. And then you have the object. Forget even the means. You have subject and object. You have the object of the thought, and then you are the thinker. Correct? And usually a means of knowledge is needed. The eyes, you see something and you think of something and you see something, whatever it is. The eyes here are the means of knowledge, for example. Thinking, which is the means of knowledge, thought, object of this knowledge, and thinker, the subject of this knowledge. Correct? So this triputi, this threefold distinction is there in every thought. Thinker, thought, object of thought. Every thought has this threefold nano distinction, micro distinction. And then what? The object, is it constant? No. Because 1 minute you thought of God, another minute you thought of something else, then you thought of, sandwich, then you got thirsty, then you thought of something to drink after that. Then you said, I better have a nap, then you thought of nap. So the object of thought is constantly changing. And the means of knowledge are also constantly changing. Is the thinker changing? Is the thinker variable or invariable?
The thinker in this triad is variable,
The thinker in the triad is variable?
I would think.
How?
Yeah, because the thinker here, I'm being taught, is not that power or even just the witness of the thinking or the upholder of it all. So if the triad can vary in two of the three, the triad itself, I'm saying, can vary. Now she's moved me up to a different level.
Yes, exactly. So, here in the triad, I would say the thinker is invariable.
That's what you do teach us.
Yes. Out of the triad, your witness, that witness consciousness and thinker, that is more relevant, that argument. And what is that argument for the sake of everyone else listening? If you're not thinking of this thinker thought, thinker and thought, if you're not thinking of this duality or this triad, then what do you have? The thinker is a status that is superimposed upon the I, correct? Only when there is an object, then there is this subject which has morphed into a thinker. Same thing with witness. When there is something to be witnessed, you say witness. Otherwise, it just is consciousness without a name, without a degree, without anything. It just is. No degree, no pedigree, nothing. No antecedents, no descendants, nothing. And so, nothing to even name. It simply is. And that is I. But within this triad, the other two are constantly changing. But this is the nucleus, the thinker, and then we have to graduate to thinking that it is not the thinker, but the content of the thinker is invariable. The truth of the thinker is invariable. The thinker also will change. But here, in the triad, the truth of the thinker is what? Invariable. Whereas the object of the thought is variable. If God becomes an object of the thought, then it becomes variable. But when I know that God is there, Ishvara is there in all three aspects of this triad, in the Triputi. Object, Ishvara, subject is non-separate from Ishvara, and the means of knowledge, Ishvara. But what I focus on for the time being as a sadhana is to focus on the truth of the thinker. To simplify this, in every thought there are at least two components, one variable, the other invariable. The invariable is I, the variable is the object of the thought. So when I understand this, then I understand what is Shashvat Bhakti or Shashvadishvara Bhaktaha. So God is not something that is enveloped by a thought. It is that which is the whole fabric of the entire thinking process. It is that which is I, which is free of all thoughts, which sustains all thoughts, and unto which all thoughts resolve. That is the Ishvara Bhakti that is being talked about here, not merely someone who is doing japa all the time. No, not that we mind anybody doing japa. Such a person may be very exalted. That's not what we are talking about. We are talking about here Narahari's definition of a true sadhu that has the power to change your delusion. That is what we are talking about. And for that caliber of sadhutva, here the first, The first requisite is, the first qualification is this. Shashvadishvara bhaktaha ye sadhavaha, those sadhus who have accomplished bhakti not as as something to keep the subject-object divide in a status quo situation, but as something that has already transcended that subject-object divide by seeing the object as resolving into the subject. That subject is none other than Ishvara, and that subject is not opposed to the object. The object resolves into the subject transcends the object. The one who understands that, and the one who is subject-centered rather than object-centered, is the one who is described here as Shashvad Ishvara Bhaktaha. Got it? Shashvat means always. So this is not a state. A state is something you get into and come out of. This is the core of the very being of a person who has no more core issues to deal with. Such a person is always there in a place of recipient, in a place of acceptance and a place of receptivity, a place of no conflict, a place where everything is a yes. As we see Pujya Swamiji's life, we see this very clearly. People would fault him. How come you can't say no? How come you won't say no? And sometimes people would say, he can't say no. It's not that he couldn't say no. He wouldn't say no. That's a different thing. There's a difference between would and could, and would not and could not. He could say no, but the thing is, it was pointless because he was not in opposition with anything. It was all a big yes. A yes to life is a yes to oneself, is a yes to Ishvara. No is a place of resistance, on the absolute level. On the relative level, one may need some healthy boundaries. So don't think that, I'm saying you should not have those. Please cultivate those. In fact, they are very, very needed. To come to the place of absolute yes, we have to have a few relative no's. I don't have the time to, unpack that, but I think you have understood. So we are talking of the absolute level. There is nothing to say no to. What are you going to say no to? All there is yourself. I say no to myself. Asanne vasabhavati asad brahmeti veda chet asti brahmeti ched veda santamenam tato viduriti. So if you say no to yourself, the Taittiriya Upanishad has news for you. What are its views? It says, the one asat eva sabhavati. If you say I am non-existent, if you say Brahman is non-existent, you are as good as non-existent. Because you are Brahman. So if you say I am non-existent, Brahman is as good as non-existent. So you can't negate yourself. So there is no absolutely. Because there is no negation possible. There is no self-negation, there is no self-abnegation, because all there is a self that happens to be non-negatable. Who are you going to say no to? There is nothing other than the self. You can't say no to anatma because there is no anatma. You can't say no to atma because it's not going to go away. Where are you going to say no to? So the sadhu is a big yes. That's what it is. Ishvara Bhakta of this kind is just the one who is able to say yes. Why? Because he or she knows that there are no no's possible. And to live in that is just wonderful. For the rest of us, we do need to say no. And it is for the sake of healthy boundaries as one grows into this place of absolute yes. That is the whole thing. It's just like every other paradox in Vedanta. You say no, what is that? Succinctly, distinctly, choosingly, having chosen in order to become that yes that one wants to be, that one wants to see. Just like you become a shishya in order to see that there is no difference between you and the Guru. That is what it is. One more paradox. You say, you say no in order to understand that there is nothing to say no to. And so the one who is the embodiment of yes. And what does this yes symbolize? The yes symbolizes, receptivity. Because that is how I deal with the differences, from a place of receptivity rather from a place of defensiveness. Because the differences do not disturb. And when they don't disturb, it's all a yes. Because I am firmly established in myself, which I cannot negate. And everything that I see is myself alone. So if I can't negate myself, I cannot negate you, I cannot negate anything else. And so that is what is called Shashwadishvara Bhakti. Very beautiful. Very, very nice. Then, what is the next qualification? Viraktaha. Virakta means the one who do not have raga and dvesha. Vigataha ragaha yasmat viraktaha viragaha. During the time of ordination, they do a Viraja Homa. The final fire ritual has to do with this, putting all the tenacious longings, desires into this as an offering into the fire. Very beautiful, very symbolic. And so Viraktaha, here on one level you can take Sannyasinah, like sannyasis, but also here, the ones whose longings have left them. The longings may not have left, but they have left the longings, The longings are there, they don't create problems. The longings are managed. In fact, the longings for such exalted beings become vibhutis, glories. Like for Lord Krishna, the yellow color. Pitambaradhari, the flute. If you take the flute away, Krishna is not going to come after you. The flute is just a desire that has been freed from the status of a longing. It just is simply revelry, a way to revel in the self through music. The peacock feather. All these things are artifacts that are embellishments. So viraktaha, those for whom there are no binding desires, very straightforward meaning, but to take it a little more subtly and little more deeply, those whose desires have become embellishments that you can take on and off at will. Wide the Bhagavad Gita, Kurmonganiva sarvashah indriyanya nam indriyartheshu tasya prajna pratishtitha. Yada samharate cha ayam. Those who abide in this, the knowledge of the self, have the uncanny ability to withdraw from the sense objects at will because they are not bound by them. So viraktaha, the ones whose desires have actually become embellishments for themselves and for others to delight in. Just like we delight in Krishna's tales of sporting with the gopis who are all attracted to him. And we delight in the peacock feather, we delight in the yellow, we delight in the flute. That's what it is. It becomes for whom the desire has become a source of delight because it has been freed from the tenacity of the longings. There's no longing, only belonging. That's what it is. Viraktaha. Second word. What else? What's the third word? Samadarshanaha. Panditaha, wise ones. Samadarshinaha, it is talked about elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita. the wise ones. How does that word go? Samaloštashma kanchanaha, for whom a clod of earth, loshta, ashma, a piece of lead, kanchana, or a gold pot of gold, are all one and the same. Brahmane gavihastini shunichaiva shvapakecha pandita samadarshinaha. So with reference to auspicious and inauspicious symbols, Brahmana, Gavi, cow, etc. When you see auspicious symbols, you know there is no elation and there is no sense of identification. This is the Bhagavad Gita saying the same thing. And then what? Hasti, elephant. Again, an auspicious sight. Shuni, dog, street dog. Not very auspicious. Because it has fleas and ticks and, skin disease and of course it's wagging its tail and coming straight at you, And Shuni is bad enough, and then behind the Shuni is coming a man with a club to make the Shuni his meal. Shvapak means the one who cooks the dog. Already you are filled with, you're filled with a certain revulsion at seeing this sad little dog, and then you see the dog catcher and the dog eater, and you are filled with even more revulsion. But here, the one who looks at everything with that sameness, that equanimity, because Virakti is there. Virakta is there, and one knows, one has so much Shraddha in the order of Bhagavan and in the, in how the Jagat is, and that the Jagat is infallible because it is a manifestation of Bhagavan's knowledge, and knowledge is infallible because Bhagavan is, that which is infallible is Bhagavan. So I see the infallibility. If I am able to do something, I do it. And so what does the sadhu do? Watch him cook the dog, or gently take the club away from his hand? What do? You can do many things. Doesn't matter what you do. It's not what you do. It's how you are viewing it. That is what is the key here. The crux here is not in the action, but in your sight of it. In how you are processing this. Not from a place of disgust, superiority, or critical judgment, but from a place of this is how it is. Now would you like to hand that club over here and let that poor dog go? It's already suffering enough. Okay, here, take. Maybe he will give it. And maybe you take the shvapak to a nice vegetarian restaurant and then, say, here, have some of this instead. So there are many ways to deal with it, but we are not talking of the level of action. Darshana, at the level of seeing, at the level of viewing, there is no pull this way or that. The total objectivity, that Samadarshana is a present, a gift of viraga, virakti. The total objectivity comes from vairagya, and that is what is talked about here. So the Pandita, the wise person here, now 3 qualifications. Shashvadishvara bhaktaha ye, Samadarshanaha ye, and then what? Viraktacha. So those these are the 3 qualifications of any sadhu. No problem at all. But the clinching factor here is moksha shastra visharadaha. Visharada means an expert. The one who is an authority is called Visharada. In fact, it's a title. Like a music maestro gets a title from the government of India, Visharad. Means a maestro, a master, the one who has absolute mastery. Visharadaha. In what? Moksha Shastre Visharadaha. The one who is a master of the teaching of the knowledge of moksha. This is what is the... And how can you be a master? You have to have studied from another guru. I know I'm going over, but I don't want to leave this verse hanging. That's why. You have to study it from your guru, who has to have studied from his guru, who has to have studied from her guru. His guru, her guru, his guru, her guru, go, this way you go all the way back to the Lord, really. And so, this is what it takes. So that is the Shrotriyatva. The other three are Brahmanishtha. Brahmanishtha means the one who is Avagata. Avagata means the one who is aware of that oneness and understands that oneness and lives that oneness. But then Moksha Shastra Visharadaha, the one who can teach that oneness, is here talked about as a complete sadhu. The other three, many sadhus have. This one, is what is being here asked by Narahari to keep the company of the sadhu who is able to teach. And how that teaching goes and what form that it takes, we will see on next month. In fact, I have an announcement to make. Next month we have this class slated for the 20th of March. I'm thinking of making it on the 19th itself, because that is the day we finish the 1 month course. We have the valedictory ceremony from 8 to 9:15 or 8 to 9:30, and this class we can start at 9:30 and we can finish it off that day itself. So let us change it from the 20th to the 19th. I will also change it on the website, and please change it on live stream. Okay? Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Harihi Om.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me.
So one of the qualifications being the place of acceptance and receptivity, which is no opposition or resistance, and that's within Dharma.
Dharma also is nothing to resist. Yeah.
Because as soon as you say there's no resistance, you're back on the battlefield with
Even
the
the
beginning of the
battlefield
Gita.
is nothing to
Right.
resist. You don't even resist the battlefield. Go back to the example I gave of the dog catcher and the dog eater. So the dog eater, engenders a great revulsion. But here, for the person who is the sadhu described here, that person is beyond that. Is able to look at the person with compassion and say, okay, this is how it is, let's see what we can do. If something needs to be done, does that. But Samadarshana means that equanimity of viewing, receptivity and equanimity. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. Because within not saying no, there's a framework that frames that.
Yeah, but the person has become one with the framework.
Got it, but yes.
The person is no longer deploying the framework in order to
Well, that's
conduct
the end
action.
product. I'm on the way. In order for me to begin that practice, though.
Yes, it is within the framework.
Yeah.
You're right. Yes.
So, further to that, I was thinking, I wanted to ask you, is it something you try to cultivate, is to not be repulsed by those things?
Yeah.
You try to cultivate it, or does it
You
more or less
watch
just happen to you?
the revulsion. You objectify the revulsion. You say, oh, I'm really grossed out. That's interesting, that I'm really grossed out by this. When you watch the revulsion, you're not identifying with it. When it has already become an object of your observance. So that's where you begin.
At that point, we've also just addressed, resolved the fact that the thinker is changing, but the watcher observes that changing
That's
as
right,
well.
that's right.
And that object of
Revulsion.
the object of senses of knowledge, revulsion, yeah, in this case.
Yeah.
Well, it has not changed in our triad, thinker and means of knowledge, and the thinker indeed has a different relationship to that object of knowledge.
I didn't get that.
The thinker relates to the object of knowledge, the repulsive whatever. It is either having repulsion or not, or somewhere in between, so that the thinker is being modified, as earlier one was saying, that in the triad,
Yeah. Oh, in
some maybe the means of knowledge is being modified, so that the thinker
Yes.
and the dog are still the same, but the
let's play
in
this out.
between.
Let's play this out. So the thinker here is the person who is looking at the eater of the diseased dog. Okay, because let's make it as gross as possible. So the eater of the diseased dog, the thinker is encountering and saying, "Oh my God, this is horrid. This is the worst thing that one can encounter." Correct? So, but here, but the thinker is still, the content of this thinker is still invariable. It's not that the thinker has undergone a change, it is that the fact that I am revulsed becomes another thought,
yes.
in which the thinker is still the same. The thinker is objectified that thought. So first is the object of revulsion, then is the objectification. First is the object of revulsion, then there is the objectification of the sentiment of revulsion. But the thinker is still constant.
If I keep putting that extra little step in, I don't think we're supposed to go out and seek out things to revolt us.
So, oh, I'm sorry. Can I? So a synopsis of the 4 qualifications are really get addicted to the witness for
Yes.
the way to.
Go for it. Yes, absolutely.
That
right.
really fits.
That really is the starting point of all the 4 qualifications. Yes?
I didn't have a
No.
question.
Any other questions, online, offline?
Nothing on here.
Okay, the next time I